So, and I love my city. There's no smoke. So,
Right.
uh, but also too, one of the things I do is I love Minneapolis too, and
Absolutely.
welcome everybody to Minneapolis 360. I am your host, Anthony Taylor, African American Community Specialist for the City Department of Neighborhood and Community Relations. As you know, Minneapolis, it is always my pleasure to be coming to you weekly with Minneapolis 360. And as we've talked here for almost a month now, we are going weekly. You're usually hearing me every second and fourth Wednesday of the month, but we, as a city, decided to expand Minneapolis 360. So I have been definitely enjoying sharing and giving information. It has been a true blessing to have folks call in as well. We've had a lot of callers on the last couple of weeks, and even in a 30-minute show, we have tried to put as many people on as possible to really talk about the trial, right? I mean, realistically and honestly, we are going weekly because of the Derek Chauvin trial. And as you know, jury selection is happening now, and it's been happening all last week. Please make sure that you follow what's going on in the trial and in the process of that. You know, understand too that there's been some jurors excluded. So just make sure that you keep informed. We've definitely been giving out information to folks to do that. So please be aware. And also too, I think what I want to really get into is that with all of the things that's happening in our city, right? So, and we can even go back to COVID, right? When the COVID
Mm-hmm.
pandemic had hit, when George Floyd got murdered, and now we're talking about a trial and the upcoming results that may or may not be in the favor that we want. There's a lot of traumatic events that's been happening. We've been experiencing a lot of this stuff, and we continue. And over our existence in this country, we've dealt with that. And when we try to localize it a lot more, it hits home different when a lot of these things are happening to us, and it's happening now. So with that being said, Minneapolis, this is a treat. So I want everybody to make sure that they are got their radios up. They're sitting in a great seat. If you got your in your car, roll your windows down, turn the radio up. I got a brother that's coming on this show that's going to talk about a lot of the historical and generational trauma that he is a master in. This brother is over 30 years of experience as an alcohol and drug counselor. Talks a lot about trauma and informed strategies working with our African American brothers and families. This brother has his own show on KMOJ every Friday at 6, Voices of the African American Community. This brother holds one of the best conferences I've been to in quite a while with the annual Community Empowerment Through Black Men Healing Conference. I have had a privilege to be able to go to those several times, and it is always an honor to welcome this brother. And every time that I talk to or mention his name, or people say, "Oh, Sam this and Sam that," it's always all love. And I want to welcome and a big shout out to my brother Sam Simmons for coming on Minneapolis 360. Welcome to the show, my brother.
Well, I don't know if I can live up to all of that. I really appreciate it. Shoot. I hope I don't mess up. But Anthony, we've been working together, knowing each other for years, and even longer than you can think of. Because I've had in communication, worked with your mom, so it's all good. It's all love here.
Yep, and brother Sam, there is a couple of Anthony Taylors running around the city, so there might be a different one, my brother.
Yeah.
But I know everything about you though.
You got that right. So I'm gonna blame it on being old. So I'm old and confused. How about that? Yeah,
and,
that's what happens when you don't get all the information. You know what I mean? You know,
and, and
So
it's
It happens. It happens.
it
oh,
happens, Sam,
I'm
and,
okay. Shoot.
it's all love, my brother, and just a lot of respect that this whole community has for you, my brother. And
Yes.
I'm honored just to even be having you on this show. And as an expert as you are in a lot of work that you do with our families, with our youth, with our black men, and a lot of work that you do around historical and intergenerational trauma, Brother Sam. We are in a unprecedented time in our city with so much that we have been through and that we're going through, and we're just talking about Minneapolis, like specifically, right? So we understand that the world is going through it, but just us, there's not a place in the world that is experiencing the things that we are experiencing now. So when it comes to mental health, right, and these traumatic experiences, what are some ways that we can what are some signs that we can do when we try to address our mental health, dealing with a lot of the things that's happening in this community?
Well, some of the signs is like mood changes, changing our attitude, our sleep pattern, and it's not just with adults; it can be with children as well. And so just paying attention to these different things and paying attention to others around you, because others around you will give you some ideas about some things that are seen in you in terms of, changing appetite, feeling more helpless, and with this situation that's going on currently in Minneapolis, triggers up a lot of old emotions, because this is not, a lot of this, unfortunately, is not new for many of us in the community. So.
Absolutely right. And Sam, one of the things that I learned a lot from you as going to your conference and hearing you speak, and when you talk about historical trauma and intergenerational trauma, so kind of explain what that is to folks, so they can understand exactly what that means.
Well, this whole thing around historical trauma is really talking about a emotional, psychological, physiological kind of wound that a group of people, and I put it in a group of people, like a mass trauma, right? And how much more mass trauma can you get being, having a history of being from a family of being enslaved? Other examples of this mass kind of trauma is the Jewish Holocaust. And the thing about this is, it's like you have this trauma that happens in history, but your children and descendants still exhibit signs from it because you never had time to heal or given permission to heal, and over time. So it still shows up in terms of trauma responses, behaviors, and beliefs even about yourself as a group of people.
And Sam too, and so break that down as like racialized trauma too, right? So one of the things that I know and I've read, and one of the books that's I'm really a big fan of is Dr. Joyce DeGruy, Post-Traumatic Slave Syndrome, right?
Yeah, yes.
One of the best books I've read in my life, and it's helped me out quite a bit. So then racialize this trauma for us too, because I know one of the things that she said too that really hit me is that trauma is cumulative and collective.
Yes, and you keep collecting this trauma. So basically, we probably really shouldn't even call it post-traumatic. We should call it continuous, especially when we're talking about our community, right? And what she's talking about is, specifically when she's talking about is the black community, especially the black community who of our community that has experienced chattel slavery here in America. Think about this: you experienced 246 years approximately of chattel slavery. They tell you you're free, but the institution of racism and oppression continues. So now you got to find a way to adapt to it. Because one of the things, to simplify, when we talk about trauma, when you're dealing with trauma, you got to find a way to deal with it. And sometimes it's positive, and sometimes it's negative. And when we talk about our community, we often talk about being resilient, But my whole thing is, how long do you have to be resilient for you to have a chance to heal, right? Because we're talking about over 403 years in terms of what they coined the initial date, 1619, in terms of chattel slavery here in America, and we take pride in being resilient, And the problem sometimes is we're so used to rolling with the punches that when we can't roll no more, we don't know what to do with that. And which brings us to that whole idea around racial trauma, which is a trauma based on your race. And that's what we've probably been seeing a lot of when we watch this, what was happening to Mr. Floyd on the news is, when people say, when I seen him on the ground, I could see my uncle. I could see me, right? So we're talking about race-based trauma that refers to things like the threat of harm or seeing somebody else being harmed or being humiliated or being shamed who are from the same race, right? And the anxiety that's connected to that. One of the biggest things is when we talk about racial trauma, and there's multiple different ways that it shows, but the piece that really sticks out for me is what we call the wounds of rage, where you've been trying to deal with this trauma. You're trying to deal with the micro insults. And see, the problem we have now, even with COVID, is the trauma was already there, right? And then you drop COVID in the middle of it. It's like dropping a bomb on a gas fire, right? It's already there. We're already going through dealing with our trauma of dealing with the police situation, poverty in parts of our community that's been continually simmering all along, and all COVID did was put a bigger light on it. We talk about health disparities. Those health disparities were already there. And also, when we talk about trauma, historical trauma is now, when we start looking at the research, also has an effect on health disparities because continuous trauma, toxic stress, has an effect on one's body. And actually, what we're starting to see have an effect on females in terms of having children, losing their children, dying. So we're starting to see that not only is it affecting how we see ourselves, how we respond to events, but also how our bodies are being affected by it in terms of the immune system. So it was there. You dropped this bomb on it, and then now it's like we cannot ignore it whatsoever, either inside our community or outside our community.
We are talking with Sam Simmons about trauma, historical trauma, intergenerational trauma. And Sam, I got a question that I want to ask, brother. And please, Minneapolis, if you have a question for Sam or a comment, please call 612-377-3456 to get on the air. Sam, and that was beautiful what you said, and it always makes sense. And I always listen intently when anybody talks about historical trauma and how it affects us, and it even affects us in situations that don't even involve us sometimes, because we have that as a community. We take on our people's trauma. With this trial, Sam, that's happening now, and we're not even in opening statements, but we will get there. Now we're into the jury selection. What is your thoughts around people watching this trial or following this trial? Because there's going to be some stuff that's going to come up that is going to shake people, right? I mean, it's going to have folks feeling in a bad way, whether it's testimony, whether it's evidence, whether it's reshowing the video of George Floyd being assassinated. What's your suggestions about people who want to follow this trial? How can they at least center themselves if they choose to watch it to get through some of the tough things that they're going to see?
They really should be intentional about thinking about their own mental health if they want to follow this trial. They need to limit the amount of information that they focus on. I mean, it's an important thing to people who want to know what's going on, but if you overwhelm yourself with the information, because there's so much information about the trial, it's not just local, it's national, and you could be overwhelmed by that, and you can overwhelm your emotions to the point where it increases the feelings of hopelessness. It affects your sleep. It even affects your appetite. So if you already have some of them symptoms of experiencing trauma, it can increase those. So I think if you feel that you want to do this, realize that it's okay to take care of yourself from the standpoint of having a plan. It's like, well, why do we got to have plans? Well, see, part of the thing is, part of taking care of yourself is being real about what's going on with you. And sometimes in our community, we so into being resilient, we don't stop long enough to be real about our stuff. We're more concerned about everybody else's stuff more than our own. And so we would, limit how much of the media we have. We would maybe be selective about where we want to get the media from, like check into your show weekly, so that you can get in doses that I can handle, so don't take away from other things I got to do in my life. I know that right now, where we're still on the back end of the lockdown, we don't have as many activities for some of us, and also be real clear about paying attention to what exposure your children are having, listening to them, helping them feel protected, and then also modeling that healthy self-care behavior for them as well. But again, I think it's about, I limit myself to the information, even though I do a weekly show. I talk about this. I have people who call me. I cut off how late I'm gonna take phone calls.
We do. Speak.
And so, and I have, I have the telephone numbers. I got 2 or 3 telephone numbers. One for family, one for business, and one for other stuff. So I can keep track of the important things. But I had to learn that over time in terms of learning how to do self-care. One of the things about our community, even before all of this happened, we're so proud and pride ourselves on being strong that we don't realize that seeking help and taking care of ourselves is the strongest thing we could do for ourselves and our kids and the community.
So speaking of callers, we do have a caller that would like to get on. Should we take him real quick, Anthony?
Yep.
KMOJ?
Yeah, I was calling about the program you got going on right now.
Yes, you are on the air.
Yeah, what I was calling about is there's been 400 years or whatever they're talking about of these white people being racist to black people. You could take each situation of racism, and then you could look at it, and then you could say, okay, who did that? Okay, it's a lot of situations where these Caucasians are discriminating against black people, and you got history of it. You talk about it all the time. I've been talking about it when I was a kid, talking about it now. Okay, we know who it is. Okay, so why don't we do anything about it, considering we know who's doing it?
That's a good question. Sam, you still there?
I'm back.
Okay.
I got kicked off.
Okay. What do you think about that, Anthony?
Well, I think there's a lot of things that you can have as far as solutions, right? And one of the things that I think is important is how that we get in positions of power to make decisions that affect our community. There's a lot of decisions that are made without us, for us, that is not what we want, right? So it's really about but to gaining power to have influence on making these changes. So we all understand that we were the only race of people who were forced to leave their land to come to this country. So there's a lot of work to be done as far as, and people are scared of losing power. So it's all about power and control. But I would love to hear from my brother Sam. I don't know, Sam, if you kind of heard what the caller said, but he talked about, white folks is the ones that's always putting us in these positions, and what we got to do is get rid of them. So I don't know if you can respond to that, my brother.
Well, I didn't hear the question, but in response to what you're saying is, that might be, I guess, nice in some people's eyes, but would it solve the problem? Because the thing is our exposure to our current system means that we some of us have taken on those power control behaviors ourselves, right? So when I think about managing all this, how do we manage our trauma response, right? Because we've seen this in even other countries of color. When you get into that power and control thing, we can throw out, black and white and all that other kind of stuff, because power can blind anybody, even against their own people.
That's right.
So it's really, when you talk about an all or nothing response to a problem, most problems are not all or nothing. It's nuanced. And that means that you got to take some time to think about them. And then you also got to take some time to think about how you feel about them emotionally is affecting your decision in terms of those things. I don't know if that makes any sense, but that's my piece.
Yeah, it absolutely makes perfect sense, Brother Sam. We are with Sam Simmons, and we have a few more minutes left. If you have a suggestion or a call,
We do
you'd
have
like
a
to
caller.
say something to Sam, please call 612-377-3456
All right.
to be able to get on the air.
Shall we take this caller?
Yep.
KMOJ.
Hi, I just wanted to make a response on the conversation they're having right now on the radio.
Okay. Can you turn your radio down just for us, hon?
Okay, I'll turn it down right now.
Thank you.
Okay. Thank you. Okay. Is that good? Shall we take this out?
Oh, we can still hear. Yeah, turn it all the way down, love. All the way down.
Okay, I'm turned all the way down. There.
Thank you.
Okay.
You're on air. What's your question?
Okay, I don't have a question. I just have a response to what they're saying on the station right now.
Okay.
And yes, we have trauma in our neighborhoods and everything. And like he said, 400 years of all trauma. But I don't think drugs are the answer to that. I'm thinking we need our own schools. We need our own schools that we can raise our kids and have our kids go to. We can feed them herbs. We can feed them things that they need. And I don't think drugs is the problem. Don't put them on a pill, because that's not our nature. That's not who we are.
Okay.
I just think we should have our own community, our own schools, and our own things going on right now. You know what I'm saying?
Mm-hmm.
And quit depending on other people to tell us our kids are a bunch of initials, A, D, F, D, I, Y, whatever. You know what I'm saying?
Yeah.
That's not the answer.
All right. Thank you for your comments.
Appreciate you,
That's
sister.
all I got to say. Thank you.
Thank you.
What's your thoughts on that, Sam?
Well, the thing is I'm not opposed to us taking care of our own, but at the same time, we cannot ignore how ways we have been affected by this trauma, this long-term trauma has affected. We want to deny it's affected us, but trauma affects how people see things, how people hear things, and how people talk about things. And that's not neither right or wrong, but the first thing we need to do as a community is admit something has happened. And so there might be situations that there might be a place for medications, but I definitely don't think that should be the first option. And that's been a problem for a long time. But we've definitely got to look at how we've been affected, because we're human beings. When you deny your trauma, you deny your humanity. When bad things happen to people, they're affected, some more than others. And we are human beings, and one of the things that America has done a good job of is almost have us question our own humanity. And if we deny our trauma, that is we cannot deny that either. But by not denying it, it makes it easier to heal.
Right. We do have another caller. You want to try to take him real quick? I know we got a few
let's
minutes.
take one more caller, Sam. You okay with that?
I'm fine.
KMOJ, caller, you there?
Yes, I'm here.
Awesome. You are on air, dear.
Yeah. I was calling in regards to the conversation that's going on with Sam Simmons.
Mm-hmm.
And I just feel that, it'll be more trauma to our city that if they move this case to another county or to another state, they have spent a lot of money already by putting up all the protection and fencing, that they have done already. And why would they spend more money to bring it somewhere else? I think that would be cheating us and cheating our city as well for them to do that when that's money that could have went for some of these homeless people or for another cause or purpose here in our Twin Cities.
Great comment.
Yeah, that's a great point, and I hope that the judge does not do that. I hope that this trial stays in Minneapolis as it's supposed to be. I know there's some
Yeah.
tough decisions, but that wouldn't be. I think is a good call to do. What do you think, Sam?
No, I think it should stay here. Although I think it's becoming difficult, but I definitely think it stay here, and not just because of the money, because they're going to spend the money no matter what, and the money they don't spend,
Absolutely.
they ain't going to share it in places that we think it is anyway. At least that's my view. But in terms
Yeah.
of keeping it here, I think it should be here, and they should take on that challenge to do that.
Absolutely.
So,
Absolutely.
Yep, and I
That's the fear
appreciate
of
your
mine
call,
that,
sister.
it
Sam,
change.
we are up against the clock, my brother. I would love for you to give us some tips on just how to be able to stay balanced. Like, how can we stay balanced within ourselves as we go throughout this trial? What are some of the ways that folks can, if they access resources? Is it taking deep breaths? Is it meditating? Just how can we stay balanced through all of this, Sam?
well, the thing is one is create spaces for yourself that you can meditate, prayer, really make sure you get enough sleep. Also, I know on the different Minneapolis city sites, there's a lot of resources in terms of local, in terms of getting help around mental health issues. They got text numbers for crisis and those kind of things. So, but the main point is be really conscious about being good to yourself, right? And staying centered in that, and understand that it's okay to step back sometimes.
Sam Simmons, brother, I appreciate you being on this show today. I know you're a busy man. I know you got your own radio show and other things to do. Is there going to be a 13th annual Black Men's Healing Conference this summer, Sam?
Yes, June 24th and 25th. Our topic is going to be, what is the new normal? What does that look like for Black people?
I heard that. I can't wait. And I'm sure there's a lot of other people who can't wait either. Brother, I appreciate you being on this show and bless you, man, and appreciate you much, my brother.
Sam, we love you.
I love y'all too. So thank you for having me, and we'll talk to y'all later.
Absolutely.
Yeah, Sam Simmons, mic dropping is always a pleasure. I think for a lot of people who have heard Sam speak, who's been to his conference, who just know Sam. So I'm definitely glad to have him come on today. One of the things too, Kim, as we wrap up is I think that I want to make this a two-part series. So I think I want to bring on somebody else who was able to talk a little bit about this with our children. And that was Dr. Lolita King, that was on not too long ago. So
Right.
I think I want to bring her on again
Back.
too, to just talk about this, because we need to understand how our bodies are affected during times of trauma and how we can recognize triggers, as well as moving past those things too, Kim. I just think it's important that folks get some tips around that.
It's very important. This is going to be one of the most, what's the word that I'm looking for? I mean, this is going to be, I hate to say, it's going to be challenging. Let's just say that. I think it's going to be challenging because it's something that we haven't experienced before, especially for our youth. And so I think that we're going to need all the help that we can get. And like you say, so not to get, so wrapped up that if we lose our mental health, by just listening to everything that's happening with this case.
Absolutely, and knowing your triggers, right? So if you're
Right.
following this case, know what triggers you,
Mm-hmm.
right? So to be able to move off that or go do something else, because these are tough times. So,
Mm-hmm. Mm-hmm.
Minneapolis, I want to thank you for listening. Tune in next week at 1:00. Always my pleasure, and I will look forward to talking with folks next week. God bless you, Minneapolis.
We appreciate you. All
Thank you,
right,
sis.
Twin Cities. Up next is Zany K, Mr. Mac Loudmouth. He's gonna make sure that you guys get all the juice and the gossip and the tea for today. All right.
I heard that.
One love, kings and queens. Until next time.